We're in Joshua chapter 12 today, and we'd love to say welcome to Wakeji Kamore's channel, Reflections by Wakeji Kamore. And today we're in Joshua chapter 12, as I said earlier. And by the time we're getting to Joshua chapter 12, one of the things that happens is now it's like a continuation of chapter 11. Actually, chapter 12 is more of a continuation of chapter 11, but it gets a little bit more specific in telling us the battles that Joshua had fought. If I read, first of all, in verse 7 of Joshua chapter 12, I'm not going to read through the whole chapter today. I'll give us an overview and then we'll derive one lesson from it. Chapter 7 says, "Here's the list of the kings of the land that Joshua and the Israelites conquered on the west side of the Jordan, from Baal-Gad in the valley of Lebanon to Mount Halak, which rises towards Seir. Joshua gave their lands as an inheritance to the tribes of Israel according to their tribal divisions." So chapter 7 invites us. It says, here is a list of the kings. And then when you continue reading from verse 9, verse 7 invites us. I said chapter 7, but verse 7 invites us to the list. And then verse 9 continues now with listing the kings one by one by one. Jericho, Jerusalem, Jarmuth, Gerza, Hormah, Adullam. It goes all the way until in verse 24, it says the king of Tirzah, 31 kings in all. What this chapter is helping us to see is that Joshua actually fought 31 kings, to be specific. And that is the place, actually it's in verse 24 that I want us to derive our thought for today from Joshua chapter 12. It lists and gives us the number of kings that Joshua fought, 31 kings in all. I want to imagine that fighting 31 kings was not an easy thing. Defeating 31 kings was not an easy thing. But by the time we're getting here, Joshua has trusted God and invaded, fought and won 31 kingdoms. What does that mean to you and I today? Because some of these, when we come to some of these chapters in the Bible, books of like Numbers, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, where you come to places where, and I'm sure if you've been following this, you've come across some of these chapters where all that happens is just the listing of names and generations or numbers. And this is one of those, because you can look at it and just be like, okay, this chapter really has nothing to do with me. It's just listing the kings who've been defeated, the losers. But what can we learn from this? When the Bible comes in verse 24 and says, Joshua had defeated 31 kings in all. I think there are a couple of things that we can pick from this, and I wanted to highlight a few for us. And the number one thing is that nothing comes easy. God gives us a promise, like he already gave the children of Israel a promise for all these lands. But here's the thing, there's a lot of fighting that had to happen for them to get the land that God had promised them to get. It didn't come to them just like that. And I think this represents to you and I that there are certain promises that God has given us. There are certain things that God has accorded you and I, and said you're going to do this, you're going to do the other, but nothing comes easy. The promises of God will need us to fight through some kings, if I put kings in quote and quotes. They will not come to us passively. There are things that we need to conquer, whether you look at that internally. There are things that you have to conquer within yourself to access the promises that God has given you. And then there are some other things you have to conquer externally. Even if the promise was like, by the end of this year, your mental health is going to be in a safe place. That's an internal battle. But it doesn't come passively. You can't just sit and wait for it to come. Maybe the promise to you is that you're going to become a better person, a better, whether it's in your character or in business or better in your profession. But none of those things come to us by just waiting and by just sitting. Joshua shows, or rather not shows and demonstrates to us that even the promises that come from God. Yes, God enables us to access those. He enables us to go, and He tells us constantly, I'll never leave you, I'll never forsake you, I'll fight with you. But the engagement is ours. We have to engage. Defeating 31 kings, I've already said that before, is not an easy thing. But Joshua fought, and he fought to the last king. And then the second thing that is the first thing I've said is nothing comes easy. But I think for me, and this one was a very personal takeout for me, is that I have to learn to finish the assignments that God has given me. That's what Joshua demonstrates. He didn't fight 20 kings and then be like, you guys, we fought. Or 12 kings and then being like, okay, we're done with this. He fought 31 kings. He finished the assignment. And I wondered, as I was reading this and it had that finality for 31 kings in all, what stops me? I kept asking myself as I read this chapter in preparation, what stops me from finishing the assignments that God has given me? Is it that sometimes I don't understand the assignment in itself? Or is it that sometimes I don't understand who has sent me? Is it that sometimes I don't understand, what exactly, I think I've already said what, but why? Why am I, what is the reason why I'm doing this? And I wondered if any one of these three reasons has sometimes not understanding, exactly what the assignment is, or sometimes not understanding why the assignment is important. You see, Joshua understood that if he didn't finish fighting these kings, no one else would. And the children of Israel would have continued wandering. They never had settled. And their settling was going to impact on the name of God, like who the nations around the children of Israel would have understood God to be. They would have looked at God as a joker. He promised you guys to go settle down, but you've never settled. And Joshua understood that the name of God was the name of God would have been held in vain. The name of God would have been treated with disrepute if he didn't finish the assignment. And he knew that whatever burden was on his shoulders was a great burden. And I figure that sometimes the reason why we don't finish the assignments that God gives us is that it's either one of these three reasons. We don't understand. We don't take time to understand who has sent us, and understanding who has sent you enables you to know that you will defeat and you will conquer all the kings that he has promised you will conquer. Sometimes we don't understand why the assignment is important. Understanding why the assignment God has given you is important and what is at stake helps you even in times when you feel demotivated or whatever it is that you're doing feels little and small. And then number 3, we don't understand what the assignment is. It's important to understand so that you can finish. You know, when do I begin? What does finishing this assignment look like? But Joshua had all that. And I feel like this chapter causes me to go back to a place of reflecting and asking, what battles have I abandoned that I need to go back and finish? That's what seeing this number down here, 31 kings in all, takes me to a place of reflection to ask, what assignments have I abandoned that I left halfway, that I didn't finish just because I really, really didn't understand the what, the why, or the who has sent me and the importance of the assignment. And then secondly, that what I'd said is that to understand that nothing comes easy. The promise is there, the land had been promised, but these guys had to fight every one of these kings to get what God had promised them. So I don't know where this chapter finds you. Maybe for you, your encouragement is, hey, nothing comes easy. Go. God has enabled you to fight, so go and fight and win and conquer the things that he has called you to conquer. Or number 2, maybe you've already, stepped out to go and fight the battles, and this chapter comes in as a reminder for, hey, listen, make sure you finish what you've started. Finish it off. Whether it's 31 or 50 kings, whatever kings may mean to you, just make sure you finish what God has called you to do. So thank you for joining us today. Again, if this is an encouragement to somebody, make sure you remember to share it with them and subscribe to the channel so that we can continue sharing God's word together. God bless you and have a fantastic day. Bye.